Zach, my closest friend since grade school, and I had this ridiculous winter tradition. Probably the dumbest thing we ever came up with. We'd take his uncle's beat-up old Ford and drive it way out into the backwoods, way past where the snowplows even tried to clear. The pond we liked to fish at wasn't much, just a wide sheet of ice nestled in fir trees, but it was ours. We were the only ones dumb enough to go all the way out there, especially with plenty of other lakes that were easier to get to. Early and late winter were always our favorite times to head out, when the ice wasn't quite safe. It gave the whole thing this edge. Zach always said it wasn't real fishing unless there was the real chance of ending up soaked in ice water. If we fell through, that would be it. Getting back to solid ground was one thing, but getting all the way back to town? Nearly impossible. That morning we rolled out just after sunrise, cold snapping so hard it made my teeth throb. Zach cranked the heat and we passed around a thermos of burning hot coffee, handing it back and forth. The truck tires kicked up clouds of fresh powder as we bounced down the winding dirt roads, dodging ruts big enough to swallow a tire. By the time we rolled up to the pond, the sky had gone this dull, iron gray, like a storm was waiting to strike. We pulled up to our regular spot, a little clearing by the shore where the ice always held better, but someone had gotten there first. A couple of guys bundled up like they were on the moon had already staked out a little setup of folding chairs and tip-ups right where we usually dropped our lines. Zach cursed under his breath, giving the steering wheel a thump. "Of course," he muttered. "We drive all the way out here and these jokers act like they own the place." I laughed, mostly to break the tension in the truck. "Come on, man. It's a big pond. Plenty of space." He gave me a look but nodded. It was weird, though. We'd literally never seen another soul out here. We drove further along the edge, bouncing through snowdrifts until we found a decent enough spot. Not perfect, not our usual setup, but it would do. The ice creaked under our boots as we hauled the auger and gear out. We knew how to read the ice by now. It looked clean, no cracks or slushy patches. But still, the groaning sounds always got under my skin. We bored a couple of holes and got our rods set up, then fired up this little heater to keep our fingers working. Zach lit a cigarette and offered me one, but I passed. The wind had picked up, slicing over the pond, and I didn't feel like fighting it. "Look at those guys," Zach said, nodding back at our old spot. They had a pile of fish already flopping in the snow. "Lucky jerks," I muttered. "Just wait," Zach grinned, blowing smoke. "They always come our way eventually." I wasn't sure if he was right, but I settled in and crossed my fingers. That first hour was uneventful, it usually was. Ice fishing's kind of like that. The lake needs time to wake up. Zach and I didn't talk much, just shifted now and then to keep from freezing solid. The cold had this way of swallowing sound, making the world feel like a vacuum. It was peaceful in a weird, tense kind of way. The guys at our old spot were pulling fish up left and right, big chunky perch like it was a stock tank. Another group farther down didn't seem to be catching anything either. I was about to make a joke about bribing the lucky guys for bait when Zach's line twitched. "Finally," he muttered, leaning over to grab it. He gave it a tug, reeled, and yanked up a decent-sized rainbow. Not bad, at least it was a start. He tossed it in the bucket, and not 10 seconds later my line jerked too. That next hour was actually a good time. Fish were biting and we weren't just sitting there freezing anymore. I even took the cigarette Zach offered, lighting it with shaky hands as we watched the lines dance. It was close to mid-morning when I noticed someone coming out from the trees. At first I thought it was another fisherman hunting for a decent hole, but the outfit caught my eye. Green coat, tan pants, the kind of gear a park ranger wears. He was tall and lanky, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that cast most of his face in shadow, and something about him just felt off. I couldn't put a finger on it. Maybe just the fact that he was official and all the way out here. "Check it out," Zach said, nudging me. He squinted into the glare. "Ranger," he said, puffing out a breath. "Guess it's good we're actually legal this time." Huh? He was right. Truth was, we were only like 16 back then, and half the time we didn't bother with fishing licenses. But this year, somehow, we had them. The ranger made his way toward the guys at our usual spot first. We watched him talk, saw them pull out paperwork, and the ranger gave a nod. Nothing weird. Just doing the rounds, Zach muttered, snuffing out his smoke and reaching for his tackle box. Might as well dig out our permits. Yeah, I said. He's already heading this way. I fished mine out from a tangle of hooks and sinkers, and by the time I looked up again, the ranger was walking our way, or at least I thought he was. Where'd he go? Zach asked, standing up for a better look. I scanned the ice. Nothing. Just an open sheet, the other fisherman, and no sign of him. No tracks either. Not coming to us or even going back the other way. Just gone. That's strange, I said. Maybe he turned around, Zach offered, but he didn't sound sure. We sat down again, trying to act normal, but the air around us felt different. I kept looking back at the woods, half expecting to see him again, but nothing. Now, you have to understand, this was a flat, wide-open pond. No trees, no boulders, nowhere to hide. He should have been right there in plain sight. Whatever happened, he wasn't there anymore. We kept fishing, trying to ignore it. But then, maybe 20 minutes later, Zach nudged me and pointed. There he is. I looked where he was pointing and spotted the ranger again, just inside the treeline, half hidden in shadow. He wasn't just standing there either. He was peeking out from behind a thick trunk, so only the top half of him was visible. But here's the kicker, he was behind us now, on the opposite side of where we parked. There was no way he could have gotten over there without us seeing. He would have had to cross the entire frozen lake, and we never saw him move. What's he doing back there? I whispered. Zach shrugged. Maybe he wants us to come to him. Why would we do that? I asked. Before Zach could answer, the ranger waved. Not a casual wave, but a stiff, direct motion. Then he spoke. His voice echoed over the ice, like he was standing right next to us. Come here, he said. Need a word. I don't know why, but hearing it sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Should we? Zach asked. I don't know, man. Something's not right. But Zach was already getting up, brushing snow off his jeans. Let's just get it over with. We walked toward the trees, every step heavier than the last. The ranger didn't move, just watched us approach. When we were maybe 20 feet away, he stepped back and disappeared behind the tree. Hey, Zach called. We're here. What do you need? No answer. We reached the tree and looked around. No ranger. Nothing but more trees stretching back into the woods. His tracks went behind the trunk and just stopped, like the ground had eaten him. This is messed up, I said, feeling completely thrown. Zach turned, scanning the trees. There, he whispered. I followed his eyes, the ranger again, peeking from behind a different tree, deeper in. He waved again, then vanished. What is this guy doing? I muttered. Zach didn't answer. He was already moving. Wait, I hissed, grabbing his sleeve. Something's wrong. Then stay here, he snapped, shaking me off. I watched him walk to the second tree, calling out. But just like before, nothing. Zach, let's go. This is not right. He turned back to me, then froze. Behind you, he whispered. I spun around, heart pounding, but saw nothing. Just quiet woods and my own shaky breath. Zach didn't argue now. We're done here, he said. Let's go. What did you see? I asked as we hurried back across the ice. He was right there, Zach said. Right behind that tree. Then gone. We reached our spot, but stopped cold. The ranger was back, standing next to our stuff, waving us over. We just stared at him, like we were seeing a ghost. And maybe we were. How the hell? Zach whispered. You see that? Yeah, I said. The ranger stood calmly, hands on his hips. He smiled, that big, too-wide grin. Then he waved us closer. Gentlemen, he called, voice smooth, need to check those permits. Zach glanced at me. What do we do? I don't know, I said, stomach twisting. We walked forward slowly. The ice groaned under our boots, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into something we wouldn't come back from. The ranger didn't move, just kept watching. When we got close, Zach handed over his license and I fumbled with mine, hands trembling. The ranger looked. I don't know why I suddenly felt like heading back out to that old lodge. It had been over a decade since I'd stepped on that land, let alone spent the night there. But one morning, around early February, I woke up with a chill deep in my bones, like something or someone was pulling me back there. I tried to round up some company for the trip. My brother laughed in my face. My cousin had work. My parents weren't about to trek through waist-deep snow just to sit in a creaky old hut. Even my wife, who usually went along with my weird impulses, made a face. "Sure, go have your little mountain getaway," she said, tossing a thick pair of wool socks into my pack. "Just don't freeze out there." So, it was going to be just me. I loaded up the truck with everything I figured I'd need. Food, shells, a bottle of bourbon, split wood, and enough blankets to bury a moose. The drive was long, hours winding through endless pine and birch, and that road? Narrow, nearly gone under the layers of snow. Towns dropped off behind me mile by mile, till there was nothing but me and the forest. By the time I turned onto those old side roads, the world had turned completely white. A storm had passed not long before, dumping a fresh blanket of powder across everything. The tires groaned in the snow, slipping and catching, the truck lurching in uneven bursts. Twice I had to get out and dig myself loose with the rusted shovel I kept in the bed. It was quiet, real quiet. The only noise was my breath fogging up and the sound of metal scraping against frozen ground. Took way longer than I thought it would, but I finally made it. The cabin still stood where it always had, tucked between two tall trees, its old wooden walls swallowed in snow. It looked untouched, exactly how I remembered it, except for one thing: footprints. They crossed the porch, half buried in fresh snow but clearly there, deep, defined, too straight to be from an animal. I stared at them for a while, breath fogging in the cold. Then I brushed it off. Could have been old tracks. A hunter, maybe, or someone lost. I hauled my gear inside, thick dust on every surface. No signs of anyone having been there recently. The place was freezing like a crypt. I didn't waste time, dropped my bags, grabbed the axe, and headed to the shed. The lock was still there. Inside, stacks of firewood just like I'd left them. But when I stepped back up on the porch, I paused. The front door, I was sure I had shut it when I walked out, but now it hung slightly open. Had to be the wind. That was the only thing that made sense. I went inside, bolted it shut behind me. I was alone, right? I got busy right away. First thing was heat. I packed the fireplace with logs and got a flame going. But as I crouched near it, feeding the fire, something felt off. The ashes already inside the fireplace weren't that old. Still clumped, not yet reduced to soft dust. And below it, a faint red glow. Somebody had burned a fire in here not long before me. I stood up slow, scanned the room. It had been ice cold when I came in, no heat, no smoke. But the fireplace told a different story. Maybe my cousin came up here and just never mentioned it. Not unheard of. Still, something about it itched at me. I moved on, piled wood near the hearth, unpacked my gear, set the bourbon on the counter. That's when I saw the mug in the sink. It wasn't mine. I walked over. Inside, coffee residue clung to the ceramic. Dried out, but not old. Dark rings at the bottom. It hadn't been washed, not even rinsed. My pulse kicked up in my neck. I checked the back door. Unlocked. Then the bedroom. The bed had been disturbed. Sheets pulled back. A crease in the pillow. A clear dent in the mattress, like someone had laid there not long ago. I stood there for a minute, feeling that heavy silence settle in. I wasn't alone. Not the whole time, anyway. Someone had been here recently, and they hadn't bothered to clean up. I should have packed up right then. Should have thrown my gear back in the truck and headed toward civilization. Anywhere with lights, people. But I didn't. Instead, I did what a guy does when he's by himself in the woods and something's not sitting right. I ignored it. Honestly, I just figured maybe someone in the family had stayed over and not said anything. I kept on like nothing was wrong. Hummed a little tune to myself like that would keep the nerves away. Cooked a steak on the gas burner. Boiled some potatoes. Turned on the radio. Found a station playing something slow and mellow. The cabin felt less empty with the music playing. Outside, the snow started coming down again. Heavy, thick, a steady curtain swallowing the trees. The bourbon lit up my chest as I sat there, watching the snow fall. For the first time since I got there, I felt myself begin to settle. Then the floor creaked. Upstairs, I stopped chewing, sat completely still. Another creak, the weight of someone shifting. Somebody was up there. I reached for the pistol I always brought, a 6-shot .38 special. My fingers wrapped around the grip, tight. The music was still going, and that's what made it worse. Whoever was upstairs, they were moving with the beat. I let the record play a few seconds longer, listening. The footsteps weren't random. They weren't just wandering. They were keeping time with the song, like they were trying to hide their steps inside the rhythm. I stood up, pushing the chair back. Thankfully, the music covered that sound, but I felt the floor tremble beneath me as the footsteps paused. Then, started again. I pulled the plug from the wall. The music stopped, dead quiet. The footsteps didn't. They got heavier, more direct, heading for the stairs. I raised my gun. My voice came out level, but my hand was slick with sweat. "I know you're up there," I called. "Come down easy, and I won't shoot." Silence. Then a step. Another. And then, from the shadows, someone appeared. A man. Skinny. Unshaven. Wrapped in layers of filthy clothes. His breath was so foul I had to turn my head. His eyes flicked from the pistol in my hand to the door. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "Just needed somewhere warm." I didn't lower the gun. "That why you were sneaking around?" He hesitated. "Didn't want to spook you." "Well, you did a hell of a job with that." We stood there a long while, fire popping behind me. The man swayed like he hadn't eaten in days. Then, against all my better judgment, I stepped to the counter, grabbed the plate of food I hadn't finished and held it out. "Eat." He blinked. "You serious?" "Eat," I repeated. "Then leave." He took it, hands trembling, and sat down. Devoured the food like a starving animal. I kept the gun trained on him the whole time. When he finished, I pointed to the door. "There's a shed out back. You can sleep there." He looked at me, unreadable, then nodded. Wiped his mouth on his sleeve, stood up. "Appreciate it," he muttered. I walked him out. He trudged through the snow, ducked into the shed, and closed the door. I stood on the porch for a long while, just staring. Then I locked the cabin door tight behind me and waited. Sleep didn't really happen. I laid in bed, gun on my chest, just listening. The fire had burned low. Shadows flickered across the walls. The wind howled now and then. The logs creaked like they were alive. I wasn't listening for the wind. I was listening for him. The shed was only 20 paces from the cabin. If he changed his mind, if he wanted more than just a meal and a roof, he wouldn't have to work hard. I told myself I'd hear him coming. Eventually, sleep won. I dozed off, the pistol still in my grip. Morning came. The fire had gone out. The cold wrapped around everything like a blanket. I sat up, my joints stiff. My first thought, the shed. I looked out the window, door still shut. No tracks in the snow. I pulled on my coat, boots, hat, stepped out onto the porch. The world was silent, that eerie hush you only get after a deep snowstorm. My boots crunched as I made my way to the shed. I knocked. No answer. Again. "Hey," I said. "Time to head out." Nothing. I unlatched the door, opened it. Empty. The blankets I'd left were tossed in the corner. But he was gone. No prints in the snow. No trail. Nothing. I stood there, staring at the clean, untouched snow stretching off into the trees. There should have been tracks, but there weren't. I packed fast, didn't finish breakfast, didn't clean, threw everything into the truck and got the hell out. Weeks later, I caught wind of a story. A guy I knew said there'd been a drifter wandering around, breaking into houses, spooking folks. Someone caught watching people through windows in the middle of the night. The description matched perfectly, but I didn't say a word, didn't bring up the lodge, didn't talk about the shed. Asterisk, I've been looking forward to this night all year. The tickets weren't cheap and they sold out in no time, but I managed to grab two. One for me and one for Mason. This was going to be epic. Asterisk. Asterisk, we got to Midtown early, layered up against the chill. The air had that sharp edge that felt like it could slice through you. The line was already forming. People packed close along the old brick wall of the venue, shifting from foot to foot, their breath fogging in the cold. You could feel the buzz moving through the crowd. A group near the front had a portable speaker playing the band songs, and a few folks were singing along. Asterisk. Told you it was smart getting here early? I nudged Mason. Asterisk, he grinned. Always trust my gut. Asterisk. Asterisk, we found our place in line, maybe 50 or 60 people back. Not bad at all. Mason slung an arm around me, trying to share some warmth. The sidewalk beneath us was slick, leftover patches of ice from the storm last night still clinging on. I could barely feel my toes, but I didn't care. Asterisk. This is going to be wild, I said, bouncing on my heels to stay warm. Asterisk. Mason smiled, stuffing his hands into his coat. For sure, but I gotta find a restroom before we're stuck inside for hours. Asterisk. Asterisk, I frowned. Now? You couldn't have gone before we left. Asterisk. Asterisk. Didn't have to then. He shrugged and pointed across the street. There's a cafe over there. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Asterisk. Asterisk, the line was tight, and I didn't want to lose our place. I sighed. All right, just hurry. Asterisk. Asterisk, he kissed my forehead and jogged off, vanishing into the traffic lights and slushy gutters. I leaned back against the freezing wall and pulled out my phone. The line had shifted a bit. Some people behind me wandered off toward the garage to smoke. The space around me felt thinner now. Not empty, but not crowded anymore either. Asterisk. Asterisk, I could hear the streetlights humming overhead. The city just felt different at night. Harsher somehow. Strangers passed by wrapped in thick coats, collars pulled high. I glanced over toward the cafe, no Mason yet. I kept scrolling, just killing time. Asterisk. Asterisk, then, from behind me, arms slid around my waist. The touch was familiar. Mason. I breathed out, leaning back into him, eyes still on my screen. Back already? Asterisk. No response. Asterisk, something prickled up my spine. His grip, his hands, felt wrong. Then I felt the scratch of a scruffy beard against my neck. Mason didn't have facial hair, and the smell, it hit me hard. Rotting, sour, like spoiled milk and damp clothes. Asterisk. Asterisk, I looked down. His hands were filthy, fingernails cracked and packed with grime. Asterisk. Asterisk, Mason? I whispered. Asterisk. Asterisk, I froze. My lungs locked up, my body tensed. Then, right by my ear, a dry, wheezing voice whispered, "Mine now." Asterisk. Asterisk, my body jerked into action before I could think. I twisted, trying to pull away, but his hold was like steel, yanking me against him. That stink sank into my throat. Unwashed skin, rotting teeth, something worse, something sweet and sick. Asterisk. Asterisk. Let me go, I screamed, thrashing, but his grip didn't loosen. His fingers dug into me like claws. His breath was hot and damp against my neck. Asterisk. Asterisk, no one stepped in. People turned their phones toward us, recording. A girl in a fuzzy purple hat just gasped. A guy a few feet down laughed like it was a prank. Others whispered to each other but didn't move. Asterisk. Asterisk, I screamed for Mason. For anyone. Asterisk. Asterisk, the man laughed. This low, rattling sound, and pressed his mouth near my neck. You're soft, he murmured. So soft. Asterisk. Asterisk, panic surged in me. I slammed my elbow back toward his ribs, but he twisted away just in time. He was strong, way too strong. My boots slipped on the ice as he tried dragging me toward the alley. I scratched and clawed at his arms, but his skin was rough, like scabs, and his nails were jagged and broken. Asterisk. I fought harder. I shoved an arm between us and twisted my whole body to the side. My feet slid on the ice, pulling him off balance too. We hit the ground hard. My elbow smacked the concrete and pain shot through me. But I was already moving, crawling away on hands and knees, trying to get distance. Asterisk behind me. I heard his laugh, a harsh, hacking sound. I looked back. He was on all fours, grinning. His face was sunken, cheekbones sticking out under pale, dirty skin. His eyes were wide and locked on mine. His teeth were gray. Asterisk, almost had you, he said. Then he lunged. Asterisk, I rolled just in time. His hands slapped the spot where my ankle had just been. I kicked, my heel hitting his shin. He barely reacted. Then, in a blur, Mason was there. He crashed into the guy, knocking him off his feet. Asterisk, Mason's voice was ragged, furious. He stood between us, fists balled, shoulders squared. What the hell is wrong with you? Asterisk, the man sat up, still grinning. He licked his lips, eyes flicking between the two of us. Pretty girl, he said, tilting his head. Didn't like me touching her? Asterisk, Mason's hands were shaking, breath puffing in the cold. Back off. Asterisk, the guy's grin got wider. Mason stepped closer, and finally, something shifted in the guy's expression. Not fear, just disinterest, maybe. Asterisk, all right, he said casually. He got to his feet and dusted off his coat. Way too big, sleeves frayed, and some dried black stuff crusted along the collar. He stretched, sighed, and turned around, just walked away, like nothing had happened. Asterisk, I was trembling. Mason turned and hugged me tightly. Asterisk, you okay? Asterisk, I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Behind him, the man vanished into the alley's darkness. I just wanted to go home. Mason kept asking if I was sure, if we should call the police, if I needed a moment to calm down. But I couldn't stand being there anymore, surrounded by people who watched and recorded like it was entertainment. A scene to post later. Asterisk, my skin still crawled from where he'd touched me. My breath was shallow, like his arms were still wrapped around me. Asterisk, so we left. We cut through the garage, the only sound our footsteps echoing. We didn't say anything until we got to the car. Even then, Mason just kept looking at me, jaw clenched, like he was waiting for me to fall apart. But I didn't. I just buckled up and stared out the windshield, watching the streetlights flicker past. Asterisk, I wanted to scrub every inch of my skin, to climb into bed and forget the entire night. Asterisk, Mason pulled onto the main road, and we hit a red light. The venue was still visible behind us. A sea of people laughing, chatting, like none of it had just happened. Asterisk, then, out of nowhere, movement on the sidewalk. That guy, walking slow, his head turned toward us, eyes locking onto the car. I felt it before I saw him. That heavy, cold twist in my stomach. He smiled, raised a hand and waved. Not a friendly wave, a knowing one, like we were old pals. Asterisk, then he cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted something. Asterisk, Mason tensed, knuckles white on the wheel. What did he say? Asterisk, I wasn't sure. Couldn't hear it. Then the light turned green and Mason hit the gas. We sped past the crowd, past everything. Just before we turned onto the highway, I glanced back. Asterisk, he was still there, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, watching. Then he shouted again, and this time I heard it. Asterisk, he was yelling out our license plate, letter by letter, singing it. Asterisk, then he threw his head back and let out a howl. Asterisk, I clenched my jaw, holding onto the seatbelt. Mason muttered under his breath, "Holy hell! Asterisk. Asterisk, we called the police when we got back and filed a report. But nothing ever came of it. No arrests, no follow-up. Asterisk."